And just like that, we're live. Told you before we started recording, my podcast, I just keep it an authentic conversation. We just share ideas, share experiences, and the whole mission of my podcast is helping people. Like, I think there's so many people that are struggling through, like, from my community, being a police officer, being a veteran, the PTS issues that people deal with, and the depression and the suicide. When you look at the background that you come from that we're going to really delve into, I don't think it's that much different. You know, people struggling with life, people trying to figure out how to dig themselves out of the holes that they found themselves in. And so it was actually a jiu-jitsu guy. Do you know who Tom DeBlas is?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram.
So Tom shared your picture.
Okay.
And that was, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it was a side-by-side comparison of when you were in the throes of addiction versus after you got clean and got your life on track. And in my opinion, these kind of stories need to be celebrated. They need to be told, especially around here in Seattle, because addiction is taking over our community. And I think we need to shine a spotlight on it and kind of give people just some hope and some understanding that there is a path to get out of where you're at and become a better version of yourself. How I like to usually do the show is just open up with a little introduction, kind of who you are, where you came from, and we just take it from there and tell your story.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. I think it's pretty awesome that you are the guy that I saw in that video a couple years ago. So,
yeah, we just made that connection that, she followed my video and shared it and supported the message back in the day. And now here we are sitting down at a pizza parlor, hanging out, sharing space, sharing energy. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So it's interesting how the universe works.
Yeah.
So yeah, my name is Ginny Burton. I was born Virginia Hermy and then became Virginia Bromley when my mom changed my name. And dad went to prison when I was 4. House was raided. I was standing at the top of the stairs when I watched them come in and take my dad. And a couple of years later, my mom introduced me to drugs. And I wasn't really interested in doing them because I knew that my dad went to prison for drugs. But the pressure, there were, you know, I had other siblings and my mom wasn't super fond of me. And so it was a way for me to be accepted. And I made the decision to do it.
So when you say she introduced you to drugs, like, I mean, you're a child at this point. And she's literally sitting you down saying, hey, try this, or just interjecting you into the lifestyle and having it available?
Well, the lifestyle was there my whole entire life. No, it was literally, you're going to smoke weed with us because that's what we're doing tonight. So it was, she had this plan with my brothers. I had one brother that was a teenager and the other one was almost a teenager. And they had this plan. My stepdad was going to get some cancer treatment and they had a bunch of weed. And she made the decision that she was going to smoke with my brothers. And so I think I was the weak link. I mean, I don't really know what was going on in her head. So it was literally a pressured situation where I was forced to do it.
And how old were you at this time?
7. 1979.
Man. And like, here's the thing. When you look at people that are living in the throes of addiction, they're living in the streets, they're living in tents in Seattle, which I'm sure we're going to get into. Man, to think what those people have went through in the past and what brought them there, I don't think most people can comprehend that, because the overwhelming majority of us weren't being pressured to use drugs at 7 years old. Like, the fact that you're able to step outside of that and overcome that, I think this is going to be a pretty powerful journey to tell. And I'm excited to share it because people need to hear this.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
And so 7 years old, started smoking weed, huh?
I did, yeah. I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I didn't like it. Most of the drugs I tried, I didn't like when I started using them, but I just kept using them until I got comfortable with them, I guess. Yeah. And
that was just normal day-to-day life from the time you were 7 moving forward, huh?
Well, I mean, I didn't smoke weed all the time, but there were times, it became more frequent, especially after my stepdad died. He died not that long after, maybe 6 months or so after that first situation. And then my mom started running around with a bunch of bikers, having them in the house. And the more party people that were around, the more often we would smoke weed or drink whatever was going on. But it became definitely pretty regular. Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, I guess as a child, whatever you're exposed to on a regular basis, do you even know that it's right or wrong, or it's just kind of this is my norm?
Well, I definitely knew that it was wrong. It was something I didn't want to do. I knew that drugs were bad. I knew that they caused families to be broken up, and I knew that my dad was gone because of them. So I felt like I was living in a contradiction even at a really young age. So, but when you're surrounded by something regularly, even if you know initially that it's not the right thing to do, you become comfortable in your circumstances. And if everybody else is doing it, it makes it that much easier to keep doing it.
Yeah. Would you say in that lifestyle, like most people kind of share your sentiment that I know this is wrong, I know this isn't a good path, but just continue stepping down that path because that's the circumstance they're living in?
I mean, I think there's really a wide variety of people that use drugs, though. Not everybody starts the way, that my life started. And I definitely know a lot of folks that are in this rows of addiction that came from good homes, and how they end up all the way intense on the streets early in their addiction and just completely screwed. I don't know. It baffles me, to be quite honest with you. But I think, though, that often people do recognize that it's probably a bad idea. And I can't classify everybody the same. However, I think the effect that drugs have on people becomes so powerful, and it has this amazing ability to allow people to escape from their realities that people just don't care. And now we have this whole different problem in our society. We have a problem where it's acceptable and it's supported. And we have a system that encourages and allows it to continue and does what they can to make sure that it continues. And so that's extremely problematic in itself.
Well, and I can tell you as a police officer, I dealt with addiction on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And exactly like you said, there is no cookie cutter person within society that falls into the addiction path. Right. Like, there are some people, this one lady stuck out like kind of particularly to me because she got arrested on a drug warrant, a methamphetamine drug warrant. And I was taking her to SCORE. Are you from, you know where SCORE is at?
I've been to SCORE. That's the weirdest jail, I swear.
Okay. So when you're driving into SCORE, you know how it's that long, like it's like a mile long driveway through the woods, right?
Yes.
And her and I are having a complete normal conversation, just like you and I are right now. And I could tell she was smart. She was articulate. She seemed sweet. And I said, I've arrested a lot of people for things like this before, and most people don't have your energy. Like, I haven't had someone in the back of my car that is so comfortable conversating with me and telling me your story and everything. And she goes, yeah, that's because I've lived a completely normal life. I'm married to an engineer. We have 3 small children. I was the housewife. We're middle class America. We had a nice home. And she had a surgery or she got hurt or something. And how many times have you heard that story? Yeah. Where she got prescribed opioids of some kind and then fell into addiction. And once her prescriptions ran out, she started looking to street drugs, and she got severely addicted. She got, her husband threw her out of the house, and it's just that same story that you hear over and over and over, where people get addicted through big pharma. Mm-hmm. And then once they're cut off, they turn to street drugs. Yeah. And here's the bizarre thing too, is like, as articulate as she was and as sweet as she was, when we were on that long drive going down to SCORE, she knew, like, this is it. Like, I'm going to be, I don't think in my experience that addicts are necessarily afraid of going to jail, but they're afraid of detoxing.
Right. Especially when an opiate is involved.
Yeah. For sure. And so she says to me, she goes, officer, if you'll pull over, I'll blow you. I'll let you fuck me. Like, literally anything you want to do to me, you can have me if you just let me out of your car. And I'm like, man, how fucking dark is that? That she's willing to do that with someone that she met 30 minutes earlier just to avoid being put into jail. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it takes over the entire individual. Drugs have the ability to, I want to say, encourage people to completely compromise their integrity. It's so much more powerful than alcohol or even some of the lower level substances. And so specifically opiates. Yeah. It's pretty sad.
But the strange thing that kind of sat with me, it's like her conscious brain is functioning perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. And she's made the conscious choice. Like, I will compromise my integrity, like you said. Mm-hmm. to try and get what I need, you know?
Or try to avoid pain.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I mean, I think a lot of what we do as human beings is to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Of course. That's Tony Robbins 101, right?
Yeah. Right. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the other side of that is because she was kind of, I guess you could say, newly addicted, and her brain seemed to still be functioning at a high level. And then there's people that I've arrested where it literally feels like you're arresting a zombie from The Walking Dead.
For sure.
Where it's just like foaming at the mouth and growling, and you look into their eyes and it's almost like there's nobody home.
Right.
And you realize like that's what the path does to you if you stay on it long enough.
Yeah.
You know? And then there's everybody in between. And I guess, you know, I had another guy tell me one time, he goes, listen, like, I understand what I'm doing is wrong. And I understand that the drugs are harmful and they're probably going to kill me one day. But I've made the decision to continue this lifestyle because there is nothing better than a shot of heroin. And it's like, man, people can see this for what it is, but then they make the conscious choice to stay on that path because there's literally nothing better. Is that something that is kind of prevalent in the community?
I think so. But I think also in that statement, people aren't aware of what else there is. And so I think there's a small portion of the population that definitely would just use until they die. And we see that a lot. And there's a small portion of the population that benefits off of things like harm reduction, interventions like methadone or Suboxone. But when you actually separate somebody long enough for them to get their life together, and you implement necessary services that actually address the underlying causes of their circumstances, we would have a very different outcome with separating folks, right? But we're not doing that right now. So people are using themselves, and especially right now, that's about as good as it's going to get for folks, because we as a system are making it really easy for people to just remain in their misery. And it's a miserable place to be. It is a total miserable place to be. And that period of time, like if you're separated from the chemicals, and you don't have anything in place to help you return your dopamine back to what it's supposed to be, and to sort of help straighten out the things that are going on in your mind, depending on how long you were out there, you know, using or whatever, you typically end up in this sort of purgatory in your mind.
Well, and I definitely wanted to get your perspectives on that, like the whole detoxing process. And I mean, I want to rewind and go into your story a little more, but the detoxing process, I mean, is that something that you can even articulate what that feels like, or what that experience?
It's terrible. I would have to say it's probably the worst detox I ever had. I was in a relationship when we were selling a tremendous amount of heroin and cocaine. I lived up on 50th and 15th near the University of Washington. This was back in 2003, I think. And we were selling a significant amount of drugs, and I was shooting probably close to a quarter ounce of heroin a day and smoking a tremendous amount of crack. And I don't have it any longer because I did the Harboni treatment, but I had hepatitis C. I had it for 26 years.
Okay.
And if I used intravenously for long periods of time, my liver would become bombarded with the chemicals. And so my liver kind of forced me to detox because I just couldn't do it. Like I was committing some crimes to make some more money, and I did a shot in my car and thought I was going to die. I just started having this massive pain. It was just I can't even describe what the pain was, but it was massive, and I ended up going to Ballard Swedish, and they told me that my liver was shutting down, and so I really didn't have a choice but to detox. And that detox was terrible. It took about a month. And I was even using some Suboxone during the time, but I was vomiting regularly. I probably weighed about 89 pounds, and I'm 5'9". I was crapping on myself, and I couldn't even get up. I was super weak, sweating. I smelled terrible. My sister and my mom had to carry me to the shower to try to help me.
So you did this in your house then?
Oh, yeah. I've kicked at my house a couple times. So
okay.
Yeah, it's not fun. I mean,
it doesn't sound fun.
I've never been medically detoxed. So
okay.
Yeah. And Thankfully, because of how Seattle's laws were, I never really had to fully detox in jail either. I usually got out before the investigation was up, because usually you would get arrested in Seattle and you'd go in under investigation and get out within 3 days.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something that as a police officer is like, every cop has a ton of frustration in relation to this, because it's like, you want us out there, you want us making arrests, you want us enforcing the laws. And then when you do those things, the people, it's just a revolving door.
Right.
And it's like, that's not a solution to the problem.
No.
That's just kicking the can down the road.
For sure.
And not only kicking the can down the road, but it's like interjecting yourself into that lifestyle as a police officer comes with a certain amount of inherent risk.
Oh, for sure.
Just patting somebody down, And so like you go out there and you're trying to do your job, and then you see it having no effect on the community. And I think, contrary, we talked a little bit before we started recording, but contrary to what a lot of people think, most police officers are pretty good people.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think that they don't look at the addicts with like disdain and frustration. I mean, there's a certain amount of that when day in and day out, that's what you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. But the truth is a lot of people are in that job to help people.
For sure. I would agree with that. Yeah.
And so, when you see the city council and the mayor, and they're implementing all these rules where, again, we talked a little bit before we started recording, they're acting like the way they treat the homeless population is under the guise of compassion. Like, right. we're not gonna make these arrests. We're not gonna detain. This is a victimless crime. But at the end of the day,
so that's the most untrue statement I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, I know.
And I argue that quite frequently as a former addict. And I have 17 felony convictions, and my addiction was not a victimless crime, and not even just considering, the crimes that I personally committed, which I'm not an anomaly. And I just want to say that out loud to your listeners.
Yeah.
Is that 90% of the people I ever used drugs with committed crimes. And that's not even the crime of possession, which I think needs to remain a crime because of a number of things that we'll probably get into. But, first and foremost, we need to provide people an opportunity to separate themselves from the destructive environment.
Yeah.
But, a lot of addicts on the streets have children. They're victims.
Yeah,
their family members are victims. The people that they're, the men that the women are sleeping with, or that some men are sleeping with, they have spouses, they're victims,
Mm-hmm.
And so, we could go on. Those are just mostly passive victims, but the family members on their own are greatly impacted by the addiction. And so for anybody to say that addiction is a victimless crime, that's just a fallacy.
Well, and also if all you have to do is, and you grew up around here, so remember what Seattle looked like when we were kids?
Well, I'm from Tacoma, so okay. I didn't really see much of Seattle when I was a kid, but okay. I do know what it looked like in the early 2000s, and it doesn't look like that now. It doesn't
look the same.
No.
And Seattle's become one of the nation's leading cities in petty crime, right?
For sure.
We might not be the leader in homicide and the super armed robbery, the super violent shit, but smash and grabs and car prowls and all those little things, that is 100% a result
for sure
of the addiction.
Well, and we're seeing increasing rates of assaults on the streets that are not being criminalized also. And we're calling it, mental illness, which, and what we're doing, we're sending a direct message to people that the victims of these crimes don't matter, that their lives don't matter. But at the same time, simultaneously, we're taking a harm reduction approach in so many of the major cities across the nation, not just with drug use, but also with crime. We're taking a harm reduction approach in the same way. And we're telling perpetrators that they're the victims. And of course you should be doing these things. And I find that to be extremely problematic.
Yeah.
We're just exacerbating the problem.
So when would you say, you said you started being introduced to drugs at a young age. Mm-hmm. At what point was it just absolutely had its hooks in you and you were in the throes of addiction and just finding yourself in that hopeless state that looks like a downward spiral?
Well, I don't know that I identified the hopelessness until a little bit later, but I was definitely in the throes of addiction by the time I was 12 and 13 years old. By the time I was 14 years old, I was a crack smoker. So, that's pretty serious stuff. I started doing meth with my mom also at 12 and cocaine at 13. And then I started smoking crack at 14. And I fell in love with crack cocaine. So I thought that was the answer to all of my life problems. And so...
What do you mean by that? Like, what are you able to put it into words?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, any of your crack smoking listeners may be triggered. Well, first of all, cocaine, for anybody that hasn't done it, I mean, it's just, I'll be honest with you, if I could legally and effectively use cocaine, I probably would move to Colombia and do it, just because it's a really euphoric drug. But the problem is it causes all kinds of problems in my life. And I just choose not to escape today. But crack is like doing lines of cocaine times 10,000. It has an immediate reaction. It's a very euphoric feeling. It used to back in the day have a very sweet flavor. And so it was very attractive on a number of levels, but it would hit you automatically. And just, I don't know, for me, I felt like I was a superhero for a very short period of time until it wore off. So, I mean, and that's probably not, I mean, it goes into your lungs and then it just starts to expand this amazing feeling all over your entire body and just takes you away from the reality that you're in. It makes you feel unbelievable. So, like you can do anything.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I don't think I've ever said this on the show before, but when I was a deputy in LA, and I was with a federal agency, so we had a lot more autonomy on how to handle situations. Any arrest I would make where they had crack or meth or anything, I would just put it in my pocket, because we're not going to be able to get another charge on a federal level for personal use amount. So I would just put it in my pocket, and when I got home at night, just flush it down my toilet. And that was normal down there. Yeah. Or you just dump it out on the street and squish it with your boot. It's funny, when I moved to Seattle and was a law enforcement officer up here, the first drug case I had, I asked the guys, like, should I just dump this out? And they're like, what are you talking about? You know? Yeah. But there was times when I'm in my bathroom at night and I'm like, man, these substances dictate people's lives to a level that I can't even comprehend. And there's a little curiosity. Yeah. It's like, what if what if I just tried this just to see what it's like on the other side, you know? And it's, obviously I never did, because I'd seen enough of how fucked up it makes people's lives. Yeah. But, I don't think anyone is completely immune of that curiosity.
No, and I think we seek it, like, as human beings, we seek that kind of escape in all kinds of things. Like today, I get that escape by climbing mountains and doing, cycling long distances and pushing myself physically. And I get the same kind of dopamine push. It's just, I can control it, and it actually adds value to my life where, but I mean, we seek those kind of things. We seek thrills. We seek adrenaline. We seek those things in so many different areas. And crack is just a synthetic form of something like that. And, but it gives you this immediate thing. And then you spend the rest of your time chasing that first one.
So when you smoke crack, you said you get that immediate rush. Everything feels good. Once it wears off. Yeah. Do you dip lower than where you started, or is it kind of just trying to get back on that high?
I mean, I guess that depends. Yes and no. Like at first, you're just looking for another one, because you definitely go down, and not necessarily lower initially, but you just want more. You just want to stay up. You want to remain elevated. But after a period of time, you definitely go down lower.
Is it something that to stay elevated like that, it's like smoking 4 times a day or 10 times a day? Or,
oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So much more than that.
Dude, I'm not from the crack world.
I can smoke thousands of dollars very quickly.
Oh, so you're smoking like fucking cigarettes, chain smoking.
I'm pretty sure that I had like a nervous twitch for a while just because I was using so much cocaine. So, yeah, I mean, it was just pretty much constant for me. And so, which caused me to have to commit a lot of crimes because nobody wants to come down.
Yeah. And there's no way that you're going to be, I mean, Bill Gates might be able to afford that habit, but no normal person
But then he wouldn't have anything anyway. Yeah. He'd sell it all to the dope man. He'd probably own Colombia.
There's been a lot of, because I'm fascinated by ultra endurance athletes like David Goggins, Cam Hanes, those guys. And you see there's a decent amount of the ultra community that is former addicts.
Oh, for sure.
And they replace
your addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm just trying to rehab my a muscle near my piriformis down in my gluteus minimus area. so I can run 100 miles.
You're going to do a 100-mile run?
Well, that's why I'm trying to get there. Yeah.
Whoa.
I injured myself. And so I was injured for the last couple of years. And so I've been working on that and it's finally recovering. But no, because I like pushing myself, I get something out of it. Like I get a lot out of it.
What 100-miler are you eyeing?
Probably not a race. I'll probably go. I like to do a lot of things by myself, but my brother wanted to do it. So I'll probably just go do something on the John Wayne Trail over outside of North Bend.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to get there. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
That's fucking rad.
Well, it will be if I do it. Though.
What mountains have you climbed locally?
I've climbed Rainier twice. I've summited Rainier twice. I just
what route do you take?
So the first one I did was the DC route, same one everybody else does. But I just ice climbed the Couts route in July with a 45-pound pack on my back, and we camped on the top.
Oh, you camped at the summit?
We did. Yeah,
that's savage.
I can show you some pictures.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see that. Yeah. I've summited Rainier 5 times.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay, what routes have you done?
So I did. Obviously DC.
I was going to ask you if you were a mountaineer too, because I mean, not to stereotype, but you're like in special forces stuff. So, yeah.
You know, what's funny is, it's actually my childhood best friend who was never in the military that worked on Rainier as a climbing ranger. Oh, okay. And he was the one, bro, you got to do this. You got to do this.
For real.
And when I got out of the Ranger Regiment, I was like, I'm never walking with a pack on my back again. Yeah. Fuck that stuff. I've had enough. Yeah. You know, I walked all over Afghanistan with a 70-pound pack. Yeah. And, then a year or two out, started getting that itch again. I was like, all right, let's go. So he took me up the DC was the first one. Mm-hmm. And then we did the Gibraltar Ledges. Oh, I haven't even heard of that one. The Gibraltar Ledges is gnarly. Is it? And that's also from the Camp Muir side. Oh, okay. And then we went up from Sherman. Okay. And is that the Cowlitz on the other side? I can't remember what glacier we went up. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that the Cowlitz is the Nisqually Glacier. You go up the Nisqually and then the Cowlitz Glacier. Okay. Yeah. And on that climb, I swore off mountaineering because it was, we were on ice that was a really steep pitch. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those days where the ice was so hard that your crampons and your ice axe, you'd hit with your ice axe and it just go like tink and you barely get any type of bite. And Brian looks back and we were all roped together and he goes, guys, on glaciers like this, we got to be real fucking careful. Yeah. Because if one person slips, the whole rope team is going to die. Yeah. And I was thinking like, man, I got 3 small kids at home. I made it out of a decade of war. Like, what am I fucking doing up here? Yeah. You know? And so I took a few years off and then, I got the itch again. Got the itch again. Yeah. And I ended up taking my boy Levi when he was 14. Mm-hmm. And we got a summit back up the DC route. Okay. And that climb was gnarly too. It was super warm. What time of the year did you do it? It was July. Okay, late July? Yeah. Okay. And it was abnormally warm. Yeah. Because you know how you do your 1 a.m. summit push or whatever, so all the ice and rock is still hard. Yeah. Ice and rock were already falling. And a guy on the rope team, like right in front of us, got hit by a boulder the size of a washing machine. Oh, yeah. Yikes. And that's scary. I was so scared, not even for me, but for Levi being 14 years old. Yeah. And I remember thinking, I'm like, if he were to get hit by a rock, I'd literally have to walk back to my car and shoot myself. Because like, how could I go home to his mother and be like, hey, guess what happened today? Yeah. Just heavy emotions, you know? But then when we got back to base camp, when the climb was done, there was such a sense of relief. I literally like took a knee and cried. Yeah. And the mountains bring out an immense amount of emotion in you. For sure. They'll let you know who you are. Yeah. For sure. I have a really intimate relationship with them. So what was camping at the summit like? Sounds cooler than it was. Yeah. Yeah. The wind was pretty low. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think we went up somewhere around, let me look at my calendar really quick. I think it was mid-July. And so, it was, you have to dig for your snow because people pee up there a lot. So. Yeah. But, it was kind of cool. Actually, like we hung out. First of all, I had a brand new pair of mountaineering boots that I had never worn on a climb before. And so, fucking blisters. My
feet were bad. So when we came up the Nisqually Glacier, it's pretty typical on that route for folks to camp at about 9,500 or just go up to Camp Hazard, which is at 11.
Okay.
About 11.2, I think. So we camped at 95, then we went up to Camp Hazard and camped there. So lots of time to acclimate. I hadn't been up over 10,000 feet at all the last year. And so I definitely do a lot of long distance stuff. I cycle and I run and I do 20 something mile a day hikes and stuff, backpack trips. And so where I'm carrying like 50 and 60 pounds on my back solo or sometimes with groups. But so I definitely had a lot of the leg stuff in, but I get altitude sickness and I hadn't been up over 10,000 feet. But I got some Diamox this time from my doctor. I'm sure it helped some, but it definitely didn't help all the way. But I had not wore these boots. My feet were starting to blister on day 1. By day 3, when we actually got up to the top, and I was glad we took time to acclimate, but no, my feet were jacked. We got to the summit. I was like, I had to take my shoes off. So, but what was really cool is there are areas where you can see the steam that's coming out from the mountain. I
was literally just going to ask you because me and Sheely on a couple of our summits, we've climbed down into those thermal vents.
Oh, really?
And it's warm down there.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. For sure.
I was going to ask if you'd done that.
I didn't climb down in there, no. I mean, well, my feet weren't doing the greatest when I got up there, but I did go over and check them out. I identify as a chicken sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
I didn't want to, the whole reason so this last year I started rock climbing and ice climbing. I just turned 50 in October. 49, I started rock climbing and ice climbing because I'm
shocked that you're 50.
Oh, thanks.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I just turned 50. And so, but I started doing that because I'm terrified of heights.
Yeah.
Terrified. So I started climbing with this guy. His name's Carter Mackley. Former prosecuting attorney. I was like, oh, God's got jokes. Because I told him,
you're like, hey, I got 17 felonies.
Exactly. So I joined a church. I met him at church. He's super outdoorsy. The first climb I did with him, I was just brand new to the church and he invited me on a day hike. We're supposed to be back by like 1:00. So we went over to Mount Roosevelt. It's just over on the other side of Snow Lake. So if you go around Gem Lake and Snow Lake, and this was in I want to say it was at the very end of May, almost beginning of June. And this was 2017. Supposed to be a day hike. We're leaving we got to the trailhead at 6:00. So we get to this ridge line. It's like a half-mile ridge line, super steep. I look across, I'm like, oh, hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I'm afraid of heights. And he's like, well, how afraid are you? I'm like, well, not so afraid. I didn't know any of the 4 guys that I was on this trip with. And so I'm like thinking to myself the whole way, if something happens, are these guys going to help me out? Like, I don't know who these guys are. He ropes me into him. And then we get to this part where we're heading toward Roosevelt. And there's this huge basin with like 1,000-foot drop. And I see one of my teammates that's not roped up. He slides down. And I was like, oh, that's where I'm going down at, man. That's where I'm going down. So we get over.
Like, was he sliding down on his own accord or did he?
No, he lost his footing.
Oh,
and so he self-arrested.
Oh,
he did self-arrest. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's where I'm going down at.
Yeah.
Because I've never done this before, right? Like, that's it. I'm going down right there. Well, of course, it's like if you're driving a car really fast and it's like, oh, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall. Bam, you hit the wall.
Exactly.
And so it was one of those kind of circumstances. And so I get over there. And I started to slide. Thankfully, I was roped in, but that didn't compute to my brain at the time. I knew nothing about self-arrest, but I eventually self-arrested after, I don't know how far down I went, but we have a video. There's a video of it. And so I'm like freaking out. I stop. They're talking me back up. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm about to start crying, right? And so Carter, the guy that's taught me how to climb, he ends up taking a picture of me. It was the worst picture. I look terrible because I'm like trying to suck back the tears. And then we ended up summiting. 500 feet after we summited, one of the guys on our team slipped and his crampon caught a tree and he broke his tibia.
Oh, fuck.
So I'm on this mountain with these 4 guys that I don't know. We're now trying to get this guy off the mountain. And
Are you trying to pull him down, or are you
we're trying to do all kinds of things. Okay. So first we're helping him hobble. He doesn't know that he broke his tibia. He just knows he's in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And so we're, trying to help him hobble down with sticks, with hiking poles. And then eventually we get to this ridge line and they were able to call search and rescue because it was getting hard. And so we roped him, we tied him up at one point where like they're like trying to drag him. We're trying to like be underneath his arm. It took us a while. Search and rescue met us right around Snow Lake and, they finally got him off. It took us about 24 hours almost. We were on the mountain specifically for 22 straight hours on our feet. We had one headlamp amongst 5 people. Carter navigated us out of it. Search and rescue gave us some food and stuff when they saw us. But I ended up, first of all, that experience, I said to myself and them, I said, I'm a hiker. I'm not a climber. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
Like, it's not happening. And then,
it's funny. I've had that, like I said, I've had that same conversation with myself on several occasions.
Yeah, I'm a hiker. What am I doing?
And guess what? We'll find ourselves on glaciers again.
Oh, I know. Oh, I love it now. I'm addicted. And so, but what happened for me during that climb, besides the fact that I made 4 friends that are some of the closest friendships that I've ever had in my life.
Well, dude, going through a massive amount of adversity with people bonds you.
It does. It really does.
And that's one thing that's powerful about going out and a lot of people in today's society don't have a lot of adversity in their day-to-day life. And so when you purposely put that in front of you, it does something to you that until you've experienced it, a lot of people just don't understand that bond you can grow with people.
It's true. I mean, I could use a similar example with my husband. Some really major stuff happened between us where most people would say, oh, you should never talk to him again. But I recognized his value before this situation occurred. And I was like, this person is worth being there for. Like, he's really no different than I am. And it's been fantastic. Like, it's been a lot of hard work. We've been together for 9 years and overcame something really major, but same kind of thing. We went through adversity together and now we have a bond that's almost unbreakable because we've both committed to putting in the work to get through this.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing.
We don't even have to talk about addiction anymore. We just make this a mountaineering episode.
Dude, nobody ever talks to me about it though.
Oh, dude, I love it.
Yeah.
I love and I hate it at the same time, right?
Well, yeah. If I get to the base of Rainier, if I'm in paradise and I have my pack on and I have to carry this thing all the way up there because I have to carry all my own stuff. So the pack is never less than 50 pounds on the way up.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Every single expedition, I tell myself, I'm going to have a lighter pack this time.
Every time. And I try.
Me too.
I try every time.
And my wife laughs at me too because she goes, you really think, because I'll be packing and then I'll lift my bag up and I'll weigh it. And I'm like, dude, I'm only at 26 pounds.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have a lighter pack.
Yeah.
And then Jenny's like, yeah, wait till you put your food and water in there. And, it's the same old story every time.
Yeah. Every time.
And, I've actually been implementing the pack light, freeze at night because on smaller mountains that you don't need your crampons or you don't need plastics. Like you can cut a little bit of weight. Yeah. But then you pay for it. You know?
You do.
So like there's no free lunch.
No.
I just did 3 fingers about 2 months ago. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've heard of it, but I haven't done it. Isn't that up in the North Cascades?
Yes. And I'll show you some pictures when we're done. And it's fucking awesome. Yeah. In my opinion, 3 fingers is probably the most dramatic hike. That and Vesper Peak.
So I've heard of Vesper. I'm really interested in Vesper. Have you done Little Tahoma?
I have not. Oh, that's the one right off of Rainier.
It is. Yeah. And that's also, it's really diverse and it's really beautiful. I've heard that it can be kind of messed up sometimes, but when we did it, we did it in June. So let me see. The first year that I summited Rainier, I summited Little Tahoma with my team.
And what is Little Tahoma? 10 something?
It's 11 something. It's the 3rd highest peak in the state.
Got it.
So it goes Little Tahoma, Adams, and then Rainier.
Okay.
And then Big Tahoma, of course. But it was pretty amazing. When the first time I summited Rainier, I did Little Tahoma, early June, and then I did Adams mid June, I think it was. And then we did Rainier early July. So, it was roughly about a 4-week period that I summited the 3 highest peaks. And then I went and did a 60-mile backpack trip. And then I went and cycled a couple 100 miles across the state. I was getting ready to start UW. So I was like, oh, my life is about to be over. So I need to hurry up and get this stuff in. My knee was super jacked that by the time I started school, but it was good.
Yeah, I try, I don't owning the gym and having 3 small kids, like I try and get one good climb in a summer.
Yeah.
And that's about what I can dedicate it to.
Me too.
And me and Levi, the year after Rainier, we went down and did Adams.
Okay.
Cool fucking mountain.
Best glissade in the state.
And I would say Adams is like, at least the route that we went up, I never felt like I was in danger.
No.
You know what I mean?
Did you go up to lunch counter and then up?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
yeah.
right. And
I never did either. Well, there's no, you're not crossing the glacier.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be roped in. So it's good.
And it was actually kind of enjoyable to be out there with him and be like, okay, we can actually enjoy this experience without wondering if we're going to die or not.
Right. Yeah.
Have you seen 14 Peaks yet?
I think so. Remind me of which one that is. I feel like I watch all the climbing movies.
It's Nims Purja, who is a Nepalese climber.
Yes.
Who did the 14 highest mountains in 7 months. Yes, I saw that. Yes. I was like, wait a minute, because I see all of them. Yeah, that's literally my favorite documentary of all time.
Yeah.
Because people will see that and think like, oh, cool, he climbed 14 mountains. And it's like, no. One mountain would take someone like me 3 months. Right. And that motherfucker's doing it in 2 days.
Right.
It's
insane.
Doesn't even like, if you would have told me that people were capable of doing that before he set that record, I'd be like, not a fucking chance.
Right.
Have you heard about that? It's a female. I think she's Norwegian. She was trying to beat Nims Purja's record this year.
Oh no.
And she was set to beat him. Wow. She was on a faster.
That's impressive.
It's nuts. Yeah. And she set a faster record for like the first 12 than he did. And then to climb Choyu and Shishipangma in China, the Chinese government said, we're not granting you a visa to come into our country.
Oh, that's
and that's what stopped
her. She probably would have got it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it's funny because it's like, I mean, that's what human beings do, right?
Right.
It's like when you think that the limits have been pushed to the absolute max, you get this new person that comes along and says,
and they just push it even farther.
Watch this.
Right.
Right.
Do you get altitude sickness at all?
Yes.
Okay.
And I hate that about myself. And here's the thing, like, I'm extremely fit in some aspects of life. Yeah. Like I can grapple people for an hour and a half straight just because I've put a lot. That's my primary physical fitness activity is jujitsu. Right. But exercise is very sport specific or activity specific. Yeah. And so since I don't hike very often anymore. Yeah. I still have the mental capacity to go out there and push. Yeah. But my climbing partner, Brian, he goes, bro, I've never seen someone that is reaching the level of physical exhaustion that you're reaching and still just refusing to turn around.
So my climbing partner, when I was doing Rainier, he's like, you're one tough chick. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you're huffing and puffing. I was like, yeah, I've been up over 10,000 feet this year. He's like, and I was like, my feet were a mess. I was jacked up for like a week when I came home, but I wasn't going to miss that summit. Like it wasn't going to happen. I was going to make that summit. And so I did.
And here's the thing, like summit fever, on one hand, it's dangerous.
For sure.
That's what gets a lot of people, not having the wherewithal to turn around. But here's the thing. I will turn around if I perceive danger.
For sure. Me too.
I will not turn around because of exhaustion.
Either will I.
Because I just feel like, and for me, how some people actually, their legs perform better going uphill. Mm-hmm. And then some people's perform better going downhill. Yeah. I don't understand the guys that think going up is easier. I don't understand
it's
that.
So hard.
I can run down Rainier. Yeah. On our way down, I'm 100% good.
Yeah, no, I know.
But going up just beats my fucking dick into the dirt. And the other thing is like when you live at sea level like we do. Yeah. I mean, there's cities, there's villages in Nepal where people are born and live their life. Right. That's higher than the summit of Mount Rainier. Right. And that's why some of those Nepalese climbers, they have lungs.
They're amazing.
That'll just go for days. Right. For me, living at sea level, when I get up to Camp Muir, I feel it, man.
Oh, me too. For sure.
And when I get above about 12,000, I feel pretty useless.
So do I. And I usually don't feel very well unless I've been doing a whole bunch of elevation stuff. The first time I climbed Rainier, the first time I was supposed to summit was in 2018. And my team went up. I ended up scheduling. I didn't understand needing to leave the window of opportunity open for a few days based on the weather. And so my team went up, and I had scheduled a business or a work meeting because I was a supervisor with Catholic Community Services. And so I missed the first one, which was kind of okay, but I was also sad because my team was going up without me.
Yeah.
But I refused to miss the next one. And so one of the guys that I climb with, him and I both missed 2018. So we just started killing it on the training for the climb in 2019. And so I was up above 10,000 feet quite a bit.
Where would you do your training climbs at? On Rainier itself?
Well, Adams, Little Tahoma,
Okay.
go up to Muir, stuff like that. So, but then just doing a lot of long distance backpacking stuff and a lot of fitness, a lot of bike riding, a lot of cycling. So over in
'Cause
West
it's
Seattle.
actually nice on your joints.
Well, kind of, yeah. Except for my problem is I ended up messing my knee up cycling.
Oh, really?
Uphill, yeah. Because I got kind of addicted to riding up massive hills.
So your addiction has brought some of the darkest shit in your life.
And some of the most amazing
also,
stuff.
yeah. Isn't that
Yeah,
nuts?
for sure.
It's the dichotomy of
Yeah.
that addictive brain.
Yeah.
And I know I have that too.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like, I think that's just inherent in a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, that's what me and
Maybe not a lot, but a certain percentage for sure.
Yeah, me and my climbing partner, mind you, so I go to an LDS church, right? So Mormons don't use drugs and alcohol. They just don't. My climbing partner, born into that church, and again, former district attorney for Blackfoot, Idaho, right? So, him and I talk a lot about it. We have a lot of similarities in our personality, but his addiction is to mountains. He said, I feel like if I would have ever used anything, I'd have been off to the races.
Yeah.
Like for sure. Because he absolutely is addicted to the outdoors.
And what a good way to feed that your
For
addictive
sure.
mentality.
For sure. Well, and it does a lot of things. Like that first climb that I was talking about, when I came down and we were all okay and our guy got down, I hadn't even made it home yet. We're all sitting in the search and rescue trailer getting dry and, having dry socks on and eating snacks and talking about our experience. And it was in that moment that I realized I didn't have any more excuses. You know what I mean? Like I didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty sure, and I had done a lot of solo backpacking before then, but I was pretty sure that there were a lot of things I couldn't do, and that just eliminated it for me across the board in every area of my life. I had proven to myself by being on my feet and doing that, especially like making it to the top, but then coming down and getting our guy off and sticking together and my feet and my knees feeling like they were going to crumble, but not happening. I was like, I don't have any more excuses. Like I just don't. And so I've used that to fuel me for such a long time.
And see, moments like that, they literally level you up like a character in a video game.
For sure.
For
sure. That's all that keeps happening in my life. For real.
A moment of your life where you can really appreciate the strength that you bring to the table. From that moment forward, you can always fall back on that strength that you developed.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's literally like you just eliminate your excuse. Like you go back to that place where it's like, I remember and, I don't have an excuse to cut out anymore. I just don't.
So I don't know if you mentioned Craig Hunami before we were recording or not. You said you've done a little jiu-jitsu with him.
A little tiny bit.
So I'm here to warn you.
Yes.
Don't dabble too much further in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, I already know.
Because
if I lived close, I'd go train with Craig as much as I could.
That addiction on the mats is identical.
Yeah.
And what I found on the mats is, it's funny because you said like the mountain shows you who you are, Yeah. And something I say all the time to my team is jiu-jitsu will show you who you are, but more importantly, it'll show you who you aren't. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people think that they are something that they're not.
Right.
And when you go to practice and you're an athletic 35-year-old man that played football all through high school and college, and then you got a 130-pound girl get on your back and strangle you unconscious, that shows you who you aren't.
Right.
And like when those two people meet, it's kind of a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are averse to that and they hide from it.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the coin is people are like, I have to get better.
Right.
And then that's where the addiction of jiu-jitsu really gets its hooks in,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, no, I could totally see that for sure.
And, I'm 20 years into it now, and it's like the obsession just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
But that obsession also comes with a ton of aches and pains and bumps and bruises. And I know, like, a lot of people say, like, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu the rest of my life. I feel like it has to have an expiration date.
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to hike and do yoga and that kind of shit. You know?
No, for sure. And I think that's what I think about all the time. I'm, based on the life that I live, a lot of people I know my age that have gotten clean, they definitely switch addictions, but it's not the same way as me often. And I look around at, the condition of many people in their 50s lives. And I'm like, I'm not interested in having that be me. I need this stuff that I do that's physical to be sustainable. I have to continue to do it until I'm old because it's such a fundamental part of who I am today. I mean, I was always physically active even throughout my drug use. Like I would get super sketched out after doing drugs and like go take off and leave my car because, they'll catch you in cars. A lot less likely to catch you on foot. You know what I mean? So I did a lot of stuff on foot. I was always physically active, carrying things, and things like that.
Do you think at this point in your life is maintaining these physical goals, is there even a chance of relapse and keeping you on the straight and narrow? Or do you think like you're past all that and this is the new mission you're focused on?
I think I'm past all that one day at a time. Okay. I still dream about drugs sometimes 5 days a week. I still have thoughts of drinking and things like that, but I get the opportunity to remind myself. I used drugs for almost 30 years of my life. And so
do you have to live a life where you're clean of absolutely everything? Or can you have nicotine or THC or just whatever,
I don't want any of those things.
I like nicotine.
Yeah, so do other people I know. I don't like
nicotine actually it's funny. Nicotine makes me feel gratitude. And I don't know why, but
I don't like things that create dependence.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, I smoked for a long time, which is totally gross. I haven't smoked since 2015. I gave myself an ultimatum. It was the mountains or cigarettes.
Yeah, because those two things don't live in congruency.
No, and you smell terrible. And it costs money, and I could spend that saved money on gear.
Yeah.
So,
a new Arc'teryx coat.
Yeah.
You can never have too many of those.
Those things are so expensive, but yeah.
I know, but they're so wonderful.
They are. They're the best, right?
Have you ever thought about Mount Olympus?
I have not. Where's Mount Olympus?
It's out on the peninsula.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about getting out that way.
It would be right up your alley. I did it last year.
Okay.
Me and Levi did it in our annual climb.
What month did you guys do it?
It was June, July, or August. It was a summer month. But here's the fucked up thing. It's a 20-mile approach.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd be totally great.
And that's what I was saying. Like, it sounds like that's right up your alley. The 20-mile approach kicked the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And then I
like really long trips that are hard.
And it's in the Hoh rainforest.
Yeah.
And it's like super beautiful. And the thing is, I think the first 12 or 14 miles is flat. You're literally walking up the valley paralleling the river.
Oh, it's probably really beautiful.
It's super beautiful. Yeah. But we got up and we started, we camped very high. And then we got on the glacier the next morning and we were close to the summit. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I'll call climbs if I think there's an element of danger that's especially if he's with me, and we got on the glacier. The ice got super hard. And even though we were roped together, that doesn't really matter if you're on a glacier where you can't get your footing very well.
Right.
And so I ended up calling it very shy of the summit.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to do is bring like pickets and leapfrog each other and actually set ice pickets in so you can have something to catch you if you were to fall.
Yeah, for sure. How high is Mount Olympus?
I think it's like 8,000. It's not a super high mountain, but it's super remote. That's what makes it hard.
Yeah. Probably what makes it amazing too. Dude, I love remote.
When we got back to our tent and I just brought like a little bivvy, because I was of the mindset of pack light, freeze at night for that climb. Because it was also pretty low elevation, right? Yeah. We get back to the tent after our failed summit approach, and Levi goes, let's walk out all the way to the car.
Yeah.
And it was 24 miles away.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people think like when you visualize 24 miles isn't Everett to Seattle walking down I-5.
Right.
You're walking over rock and ice, complete different experience.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I'll walk out until I feel like we need to bed down for the night, and we'll just set in camp. And he goes, and he's like 17 by this time, right? And he is a savage.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, we can set in camp if you get tired, but I'll be calling you a pussy. And so I was like, all right, roger that.
Yeah.
And same thing, just walked myself into utter exhaustion.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the hardest day of my life.
Yeah.
24 miles in one push.
Yeah.
And
I've done those ones where it's just like,
you're a
I'm just
zombie.
going to hike out. And then it's like, dude, you're almost there. Just get to your car.
And we got to the car, and I told Levi, I said, I think that was the hardest day of my life. And he was shocked. He goes, you're telling me like in Afghanistan, you didn't do anything harder than that? I said, if I felt like right now in Afghanistan, that's what the military calls combat ineffective.
Oh,
you can't be in this state and be in war because you are useless.
Yeah.
Like I could barely keep my eyes open. I was hallucinating. Like, yeah, fucking nuts.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah, I'm glad that we went down a mountaineering rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, well, I only usually get to touch on the mountaineering stuff just a little tiny bit. So most of the people that have interviewed me, they don't climb or anything. And now it's become a passion for me. I've really enjoyed it. It's changed my life, honestly. It's really helped me to settle into who I probably have always been.
What are your goals in the mountaineering world? Do you have any long-term goals?
Not necessarily. I probably just want to climb some more stuff. I do want to go to Nepal and not necessarily climb Everest, but
just trek around.
Probably trek around. There's this guy that a friend requested me on Facebook, and he has a company over there. I forget the name of it. I can't plug him right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, they do some treks. And so because I get really bad altitude sickness, I definitely want to acclimate. But I wouldn't mind going over there and doing a couple of high peaks, 19,000 or something like that. And just, doing something, just being over there for like a month and just trekking. Even though I know that it's not going to be like this is what I've heard about some of those trips is that they're not as hard as the stuff that I personally do on my own or that I do with my teams over here. But still, I think it'd be really cool to go there. There are a lot of really beautiful areas over there. So I'd like to do that. And I'd like to go do some stuff down in Patagonia, a lot of backpacking and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But nothing really like high mountain stuff. I mean, I do get pretty good altitude sickness. And so,
you know what I think about that though? And I don't know if it's just something I tell myself to feel better about myself.
Yeah.
But I think if I dedicated a legitimate, like a realistic amount of time to acclimatizing,
yes,
that we'd probably be okay.
Probably be fine.
Like we live at sea level.
Right. So you can't really judge it. Right. Yeah.
And if you went to, Machu Picchu or something, or you went to Nepal.
I've heard something. I've heard good stuff about Machu Picchu.
I have too.
Yeah.
And then my climbing partner, he has done Denali a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And also Annapurna down in South America. Those are like the two big ones of the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
So, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go back to like dark shit now.
I know.
The one thing that I do think that we need to shine a spotlight on though is literally the days when like you were living in the streets.
Yeah.
And you were living in tents and you were dealing with that lifestyle. And
I just slept outside. Tents weren't really a thing when I was homeless. Yeah.
But I think about this because like so much of Seattle, you see like these giant tent cities, you see all these people outside. And then we have a storm like we had just a couple days ago.
Oh, you know what I was just thinking of? I got this shirt from Craig. So this is some jujitsu guy. And I don't remember. I shame on me for not remembering. But no, I got this shirt from Craig. He brought it to me on my birthday.
Always visible, rarely seen, it says on it.
So it's like, I don't know where the tag is. Anyway, it's some jujitsu guy. This is his line. So anyway, I just thought.
Is he a local guy? If he's local, I don't remember.
We're going to have to ask Craig. I'm going to have to ask Craig and get back to you.
I know Craig is affiliated with It's Gracie University.
Yeah, down in Torrance.
Down in Torrance. So maybe it's through those guys.
Let me just text him real quick and find out.
Okay. Yeah, and I just think that it's you look at people living out in the streets and sleeping in the tents and whatnot, and then it's fucking raining and it's pouring and it's 30 degrees out, and I don't think mountaineering has nothing on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's long-term stuff, and that's like desperation and degradation. So first of all, I used drugs for almost 30 years. Again, it was introduced by my mom. I didn't perceive myself as homeless for a long time, but even throughout my 20s, I never actually had a place to live, but I definitely had places to stay. So I wasn't sleeping outside, unless I fell asleep in a stolen car or something like that.
Okay.
So, but the end times of my using, specifically around 2000, let me see. I started using again in 2002. I got out of prison in 2000, the second time I was in prison. And
how long were you in prison for?
Oh, I've been there 3 times. So the first time I got a 14-month sentence, the second time a 5-year sentence, and the third time a 3-year sentence.
So you did 5 years.
Well, you do 2/3 of your sentence here in Washington State. So, but still,
yes, that's what, 3 years.
I did 3.5 years on that one.
Fuck, that could be a whole show in itself, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, that was the time though. I mean, I realized, so first time I went to prison, I got out. I had this plan about how I was going to do things differently. I just didn't know how to do things differently.
Were you clean in there, or were you figuring out ways to use?
Well, I mean, I got the psych people to give me Ritalin. So, and then, they gave me Sudafed, and that was kind of like a speed fix.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to get people to prescribe you things when you're in prison. So, but I got out, I was 23 or 24. Within 7 months, so I had relapsed, started using, got shot someone else, got into a high-speed car chase.
Wait. We can't just breeze by. You said you got shot?
I did.
And you shot somebody else.
That is correct.
Well, I guess a 3-year prison stint for shooting someone.
No, I didn't go to prison for shooting it. We don't tell on each other. Yeah. No, I did. I shot my friend Casey. We're still friends. He was going to punch me in my face, and I was not having it. So I shot him. He's not dead. I shot him in his foot only, but
I know I'm laughing, but it's because
well, no, it's totally funny.
This fucking lifestyle
it's so crazy.
Is nuts.
Right. It's super crazy. Hang on 1 second. You keep talking to me. I'm doing a podcast. I'm telling him. I'm texting Craig right now.
Yeah, you can tell me with Craig Anderson. Last time I saw Craig, we were at a jiu-jitsu event called Cops versus Stoners.
Oh, nice.
And we were both on team police officer, and we grappled.
Yeah, it says grateful, not gratitude.
We grappled stoners down in Las Vegas. And it was
that's awesome.
Oh, it was super cool because it's just the whole thought behind that event is to try and integrate communities of people that typically are averse to each other.
For sure. Okay. Text sent. He'll probably respond as soon as he sees it.
All right, cool.
He's my guy. I love that guy.
That's
my gosh. Yeah. So no, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And the only reason I was ever even carrying a gun, I had been sexually assaulted a whole bunch of times.
And that also just comes with that territory, right?
Well, it kind of does. Well, part of the deal is I'm not really, I guess people could consider me prudish sometimes, depending on who it is. If I like you, it's one thing, but, and people like my personality and they hang out with me. And so they thought they wanted stuff and I wasn't willing to give it to them. And so they would wait. Often it happened once I fell asleep.
Oh, shit.
I've had people break into the rooms I was in, or, I fell out in somebody's car because I'd been up so many days. And the more those kind of things happen to me, the less likely I was to go to sleep. And so...
so now you're forcing yourself to stay up.
For a long period of time.
Which is literally causing brain damage.
Totally. Well, yeah, and delusion and everything else. And then when I fell out, it was hard to even come to enough to try to protect myself. So... So a friend of mine gave me a 9mm, and then
Please tell me it was a Glock.
I don't remember what kind of, it was so long ago. That was 96. That was 96.
Yeah.
So, well, I think it was 97 by then, but, yeah. And then I ended up getting a 380 after that. So I was carrying around a couple of guns. So, I mean, it was inevitable.
Yeah.
It was inevitable. Somebody's getting shot and I was going to be one of them. So
Where did you get shot?
my femoral artery.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have scars that go from here to here because they had to cut
They
the
had
other
to cut
side.
you open?
They did.
Oh, to graft it, they had to cut and pull from the other one?
Yeah, it blew out a chunk. It went in right about here. There's a chunk, and it didn't. The bullet didn't come out the back side, but so I have these gnarly scars. But
man, your
and then
life
I have
is
this gnarly
fucking
scar
nuts.
too. So this is from the car accident after. So I have like all these scars like everywhere. So and I was a little ashamed of those for a little while, but
Hey, it's part of your story, right?
sure is. Like my body is a tapestry. It is what it is. What do? You just roll with it. I mean, because I ain't going nowhere. So, yeah. That's why I won't, I could probably go get my gun rights back, but I don't want to because if somebody pisses me off real good, there's always the potential that I could shoot them.
Dude, that's actually, I actually like that you say that because I actually teach firearms. I have a firearm course that I run.
Yeah.
And, I have a fucking gun on me right here. That's why I have this fucking, this fanny pack. But also I tell people like having a gun on you is a responsibility.
Sure is. And
you have to understand yourself. You have to understand if you're too much of a hothead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's actually very mature of you to say like, you know what? At this point in my life,
trigger me.
Probably not a fucking good combination.
Yeah. I mean, and usually it's a guy, and maybe TMI, but I'm like menopausal. I'm going through menopause stuff right now, right? And so
dude, I told you before we started recording, you talk about whatever the fuck you want on my show.
And I told you that I don't shy away from much of anything. But so I definitely know like I can be emotional. Like hormone dumps are a real thing in women, and so especially now, like I could go and get my gun rights. But the thing is like the wrong dude says the wrong thing and makes me feel intimidated, which is not necessarily an uncommon thing in some areas of society, right?
Yeah.
Is that my brain still goes to that place because I've had a lot of stuff happen to me.
Yeah, it's a trauma response. For
sure. And it's just like, it's complex PTSD, no different than a guy that comes home from the war because I lived in that violence and just craziness for so many years. And so, and that's where I go, especially with the dude that comes at me like that. And so if I was carrying a gun, I'd probably most definitely shoot him. And I don't want to shoot anybody.
A lot of our trauma response from a soldier's aspect is road rage stuff. Because we get attacked on the road all the time. Yeah. That's just when you're in Iraq and you're in Ramadi and Fallujah, like when you're going from point A to point B, that's when they're trying to get you. Yeah. And it literally took until the last couple of years when if someone cut me off or if someone flipped me off, like I'm literally ready to fight them to the death. Right. And it's like, pull over, motherfucker. Right. And my wife's like, you got 3 kids in the back of your car. What the fuck are you doing? Yeah. And I was like, I don't give a fuck. He needs to die. Right. And it's like, it's taken me a long time to try and like develop my own emotional intelligence. Yeah. To be in control of situations like that. Right. And, I actually, for the first time, I'm 42. Yeah. For the first time in my life, I'd say in the last year or two, I'm in control of that trauma response. Yeah. Yeah, no. And I've gotten to a place too where I got on hormone replacement because it took my control to this whole other level when that stuff started happening through the menopause stuff. So menopause makes you go crazier than just like a regular menstrual cycle? Not everybody, but yeah. Like, no. Like... the plug came out like it was circling the drain as an understatement. Yeah. Like I was like, oh my gosh, my poor husband. A lot of people would say that's to look forward to. A lot of people would say, oh, that's what he does. I'm like, yeah, no, no, I can't do anybody like that. But because when I feel like I'm out of control, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't like it. And and somebody could potentially get hurt. And I'm doing a whole lot of things right now in not just like the local community, but nationwide, trying to impact some serious policy change and create, programs and have an effect on people's lives. And like allowing myself to be menopausally out of control doesn't really match what I'm trying to get done. Yeah. I mean, and I think about that a lot, like, because same thing, I'm doing a lot of things with my life that I'm very proud of at the moment. And to squander all of that over a guy flipping you off.
Right.
It's foolish is what it is.
Very foolish. Yeah.
You know, and I think about that kind of stuff a lot because, you know, 25-year-old Greg pulls over and fucking smashes people in the face.
Right.
And it's like, what are we doing?
It's like we're twins. It's so crazy.
I know. No, our paths, and we said it at the beginning, it's like the people that get pulled into the criminal lifestyle and the people that get pulled into like special operations or a lot of times police work, we're not wired that differently.
No.
You know?
No.
So that picture that went viral, can I use that picture for our thumbnail for this episode?
For sure. Do you want me to send you the copy so you don't have to pull it off of them?
In the picture where you just look like, and no offense, but you look like dog shit.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Where
you know
were
what I used
you
to say about that picture?
Yeah,
First of all, it costs a lot of money to look like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people would comment on my weight and stuff all the time. I probably weighed 90 pounds in that picture. And so that was me in King County Jail in 2005.
Jesus. Yeah. And like for people that are only listening to this on Apple or Spotify,
I'll send it to you.
I'll find somewhere to put this so you guys can see this, because this is the reality. You're a beautiful woman.
Thank you so much.
And you look healthy and you look strong, and that doesn't even resemble you. Yeah. You know, that literally looks like something out of The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I saw that picture, so I was doing Fight for the Soul of Seattle with Eric Johnson. And we were talking about mugshots. And I said, I could probably try to get some. So I asked my friend that had gotten some of hers. And it was right around the COVID time. And so I went, and when I requested it, him and we finished our filming in November of, it must have been November of 2019.
And that is filming for Fight for the Soul of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that, a documentary?
It is. Yeah. So have you heard about Seattle's Dying?
I've seen that one.
Okay. So that is one of the sequels after Seattle's Dying. Yeah. So he found me by accident in my office on 2nd Yesler when I was working at the Lazarus Day Center. The show right before Fight for the Soul of Seattle, and then he did the fight, and then he did this next one, and he found me and asked me if I'd be on it. And then I was on a town hall following that one, and then he did an Eric's Heroes segment on me. And so him and I have grown a really fantastic friendship since then. He's a wonderful guy.
That's cool.
But anyway, so I went and picked up in King County my mugshots, and I looked at that because I remember that time very vividly. And I had just gotten this like massive settlement, and so I don't have anything to do but shoot a whole bunch of heroin and smoke a bunch of crack and shoot a bunch of cocaine with my heroin. And and it was.
You mean you didn't invest in real estate?
Well, that was the goal at first, and then I got loaded. And I mean, I was clean at first, but then I got loaded, and so
is that picture like your rock bottom?
I kept using it after that.
When did you eventually come to the conclusion, like, I am fucking getting clean and putting this shit behind me? And what did that path look like? Because I think that path is probably what a lot of people need to hear about.
Yeah, well, I reached that path a number of different times where I was like, I can't do this anymore. So after being shot and shooting somebody else and going to prison, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. And I was 24 at the time. I was like, drugs are a problem.
Yeah.
I think I need to stop. And so, and there was this, even though I cried about 5 years, I was also safe and I could sleep for 3.5 year period.
Yeah.
And so I made a decision when I went into prison that I was going to be clean because, drugs obviously were a problem in my life. And so I got out, and that's when I moved to Seattle. I was like, all right, change of circumstance, because Tacoma is very different. And I stayed clean for a little while. And then when I picked up again, I started using heroin. Before, I was a meth head and smoked crack sometimes. And so, I kind of interchanged that. But
you just kind of nonchalantly say I picked up again. But that's a pretty massive occurrence in your life for you to be clean. And then one day you jump back into that lifestyle. Like, what was the catalyst of that? How does that happen?
There were a few things. So, I was clean and sober, but I didn't have foundational sort of emotional base that was beneficial to me. My mom was a drug addict. We were in prison together twice, my mom and I. So
family bonding time.
You know what I mean? So yeah, she was a crime partner, a drug partner, and my first abuser. And so, and I say that not in a, oh my gosh, I'm a victim kind of way, but like,
that's just the facts.
It's just sort of where the cycle started. And so, after I got out, I was in a relationship with a woman at the time. And she got out.
Let's talk more about that. No, I'm kidding.
It's really not much to talk about, honestly. Her and I, we don't really get along. Honestly, and I get along with all my exes, but not that one.
Yeah.
So, I'm nice to her. She doesn't like me very much, which is it is what it is. You know what I mean? Carry on and have a nice
of course.
day. I'm the reason she's fat. She's 4 then. And I'm like, well, what's your excuse now? But God forgive me for saying that out loud. But anyway, so I was in a relationship with her. We were definitely having some issues. I showed up as myself. I had 2 kids that were in the foster system. I was trying to get custody back of them. There was a lot of insecurity around that, and also a lot of self-centeredness where it's like, I can't be a good mom. I don't want to be a good mom. I don't know how to be a good mom. And then my grandmother got really sick, and she was probably the strongest mother figure I had in my life. And then my grandmother died. I ended up relapsing the relationship. What made you
spiral then.
So it was grandmother dying, relationship issue, and feeling like a failure and incapable of being a good parent, and all those things sort of culminated. And then I got loaded. And once I got loaded, there was this, the beast that I call my addiction that lives inside of me that I try to keep at bay today. It woke up. I did a shot of heroin, and it woke up, and I was like, what was I so afraid of? And that started the spiral. And it was almost like I was unable to get out of that purgatory for a number of years. And in Seattle, as you know, like even back when things were criminalized, it was still pretty lax.
Yeah.
It was way lax compared to what Tacoma was. Tacoma cops are thugs, and just like us. Not that Seattle ones aren't, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, Tacoma cops will beat the fuck out of you, right?
They sure will. I mean, they never did me. They were always super cool to me, but
you're a small woman though.
I pissed some off sometimes, I'm sure, but yeah, Seattle was a little different. It was a little easier to slide around and not, get arrested. It took me quite a while to get arrested in Seattle. But I was in and out of addiction for a number of years, from about 2002 until I went back to prison in 2009. I had a couple of periods of clean time in between there, but I'd woken up this beast. And so every time I was loaded, I wanted to be clean. And every time I was clean, I wanted to be loaded. And I was just stuck in that vortex.
Yeah. Just constantly in conflict with yourself.
For sure. And not having enough self-awareness, about how to navigate these difficult things like emotions.
Yeah.
Not really having a set amount of coping skills to where I could actually, fall back onto anything. And I think that's where, some of us we just never got that foundational learning, right? And then there are some folks that do. They get clean and they clean up real quick and everything's great and they're solid. And I was like, I had to work really hard.
Where would you say, was there like certain literature or what would you say helped you develop those coping skills or that emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, it was a number of things, really. So I didn't get clean for good until I turned 40. And so that initial relapse back after prison, I was 30. So for another 10 years, I was in and out of addiction. Over the years, I mean, I've read a number of things. I was kind of smart when I was in school. I read the Bible when I was, I think, 22, maybe, when I was in jail one time. And that had like a pretty effective impact on my life, where I just recognized like, oh, this is making me feel different internally. Like I'm not doing some of these things. That's interesting. Didn't grow roots though. Since then, I've had an interesting relationship with Christianity, but I've read a number of different kind of religious texts, from Buddhism to, I don't know, I don't really know how but law of attraction type of stuff. And then, a lot of Christian stuff.
I'm actually geeking out on law of attraction, manifestation, frequency.
It's a real thing.
All of that stuff.
It's a real thing. It's a serious, real thing.
See, here we are coming to another similar conclusion.
Well, yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's real stuff. We are what we think.
Because we are energy. We are frequency.
We totally are. And we do really attract to to us what we are and where we are. And I've watched that manifest in my life even before I got clean. 2008 is when I got introduced. I wanted to say 2007 is when I was introduced to the law of attraction. That was back with The Secret, the hyper sensationalized The Secret.
Yep.
But I've read a number of things since then. And I actually was practicing manifesting during my addiction, right? And it was really interesting.
Whoa.
And it was like crazy because I was like, oh, I wonder if this will work. Which, in a sense, but with, we have to be really careful what we try to pull into our existence because there are a lot of things that go along with certain things, right? So if I'm manifesting crack cocaine, I'm also manifesting the insidious evil that goes along with that, right?
Oh, for sure.
And
No, manifestation can go both ways.
Oh, for sure.
You can manifest yourself to death into just an absolute shithole,
No, for sure. Well, I try to manifest myself to death, but there's some other universal power I choose to call God that's like, no. So apparently I was supposed to be.
You got work to do. You're going to stick around for a while.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what happened. And so,
I don't know how to say this and almost not sound like a dick, but it's like a lot of people that I've interacted with that have had massive long-term drug addiction, their brains don't seem to fire correctly anymore.
Right.
How did you get out of it? You seem unaffected.
Well, my brain is totally affected.
I shouldn't say unaffected.
Right.
But like, you still have like this sharpness to you that I've seen a lot of people that have lived the addiction lifestyle, they lose that. Yeah.
And I ponder that a lot. And I think that's that power, right? And again, I call it God. Some people call it universe. Some people call it Allah. I really believe it's a greater purpose than me, especially how far down I went in addiction and how intentionally I used to try to take myself as close to death as possible. How, just all of the different things.
When you were in those places, were you a diminished version of yourself, or were you still this like vibrant, articulate person that had like an attractive energy to her?
Well, I think I had an attractive energy. People definitely liked me even when I looked like that, which is crazy. But I was really volatile. I was very violent. And if somebody trespassed me, I didn't care if I was 89 pounds. I'd beat the holy daylights out of them all the way down the block if I had to. And so, there are definitely times where I didn't have the capability of fighting, depending on how long I'd been up or whatever. But no, people have always been attracted to my personality. I definitely have, lost some of, my scruples and brain cells and things like that. I overdosed, not heroin overdose, but cocaine overdose a few times. And that really kind of fried my memory a bit.
Okay.
So I'm a little slower than I used to be, but no, but I do ponder that a lot because I know a lot of people that they're not themselves anymore. And I really believe it's because of a greater purpose and not because of me.
Okay. That's interesting. Cause the term permafry,
it's a real thing.
It came from a real thing,
Right.
Man, that's fascinating. So like you said, when you were 40, that's when you said, all right, I'm fucking done.
Yeah. 5 days from now, I'll have 10 years clean and sober.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fucking rad.
Yeah.
That should be celebrated.
Oh, it is every year.
So we're going to throw a big sober party for you?
No, I go to meetings. I go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings and I share my experience, strength, and hope, and I reach out to other people. And that's how I celebrate. Yeah. I celebrate by trying to give back to a community that is hopeless sometimes.
I already heard you say it earlier because a lot of former addicts say it's like, it's a fight that's one day at a time.
It is.
And that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, my brain still tells me I like drinking. I like singing karaoke. There's a bar that I love in Idaho, in Elk River, Idaho. It's like population 139.
And you want to go there and have some drinks and sing
just like for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? But in reality though, it's because I learned how to drink without blacking out. I had taken a long break from drinking. And then in 2011, I drank again and it was great. Or so I thought, but problem is it only takes one crazy thought or one thing that I think I see out of the corner of my eye before I'm hitting a dude upside the head with a rock or something. No, tell me,
from old school when he's like, "I'll just do one. I'll just have one." Yeah, and he's like, "No, I can't." And then he's
one
like,
is too many,
and
he goes,
"Hey, once it hits your lips, it's so good.
It's so good. It's so good."
And I've actually had buddies that weren't like methamphetamine addicts or heroin addicts, but pretty hardcore alcoholics.
Yeah.
That come to the conclusion after 5-8 years being sober, like, dude, I can drink socially again.
Yeah.
And I had one friend in particular that is like, oh, it looks like this is working for him. And then you fast forward 2 or 3 years and it's not working for him anymore. No. So I think it's safe to say, like, if you've battled addiction before, you're probably never going to be in a safe spot to dabble ever again. Right. Yeah. I
feel like, so I know a lot of people that, that did a lot of drugs, and where I come from in Tacoma, it's pretty common. They do a lot of drugs and then they're like, oh, this is a problem. And okay, so now they just drink. Yeah. But they drink to excess. They're, and so,
let's be honest, alcohol's one of the worst, right?
Yeah, it's a drug. It's, it's a mood changing, mind altering substance. Right. And I'll tell you, you put alcohol in my body and all bets are off. You know what I mean? There could be a violent crime that's getting ready to happen at the end of the bar. Like,
especially if it's Jägermeister.
Or whatever, right? Like, and let me mix alcohol. It's like somebody may potentially get hit upside the head with a pool cue for something that I perceive may have occurred, right?
I know. I don't know if I should be sitting here laughing, but it's like...
Well, it's because you identify, I think.
Yeah, but you're this, like, it's just easygoing, like, you're easy to get along with, but if we start taking Jaeger,
you're not doing a podcast with my husband. Let me see. He said, "Sick, Greg Anderson, former cop." The shirt came from Evandro Nunes, a jiu-jitsu black belt, a friend of mine that I met through training.
Okay, cool. Shout out.
Yes.
So what would you say? There's a couple things that I want to talk on, but speak about one before we wrap this up. For people that are in that place right now.
Yeah.
And they're probably not listening to the Endless Endeavor podcast on Spotify, but I promise you, there's probably tons of listeners whose brother is in that spot or sisters in that spot.
Yeah.
If someone is in that place that seems hopeless and it's that revolving door of relapse and arrests and all the shit that we've talked about, what do you think the answer is? What would you say to those people?
Well, what I do say to those, I get a lot of phone calls or emails or messages from those folks. A lot of folks that are losing their family members. A lot of folks whose brother, sister, wife, husband, mom, dad, son, daughter are in that situation. And it's very heartbreaking sometimes because right now, unfortunately, we have a system that's not holding people. And people get really pissed off when I say this, but if they get arrested, please advocate for them to stay put. Please advocate with the court system for them to stay still until they can get the necessary services they need. Not medical assisted treatment where we're getting them loaded on pharma-based drugs. But, let's try to get them into a treatment center. Let's try to get them into an effective diversion program like a drug court that's almost non-existent now, depending on where you live. But, and also recognize the more you do for it, the individual that is in the throes of addiction, the less likely they are to get uncomfortable enough to want to do something. And that's really hard when it's somebody that we love.
Yeah, especially like if it's your fucking child. Like, how can you?
Right.
You hear so many people say you got to hit rock bottom first, but I think most people, and I would be guilty of this too, if one of my children started going down this path, I would want to believe, no. We can stop this somehow, some way.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing it. I do stuff. One of the things so I have 3 kids. My son is 31. He just turned 31. I have a 29-year-old daughter who will be 30 on January 27th and a 16-year-old. Not all of my kids have been, perfect children. And what I've recognized, like with any of my kids that have used substances, and one of them to excess has used substances, but, I had to realize that by me taking care of their need, disabled them from having to figure it out on their own. And it can become really challenging for the individual, for the person, that is paying the way of that person, because it becomes very painful and we're just kind of enabling. Well, not even kind of, we're definitely enabling their situation. So, advocating, if they are system involved in any way, advocating for a separation long enough for them to have clarity of mind and then start working on trying to implement services. That's the best route, in my opinion. A lot of people push back on that because they say harm reduction is allowing a person to maintain their dignity. Not true.
Do you think there should be like mandatory in-treatment programs for a lot of the people that are on the streets?
Yes. I do.
And
I think we need to make drug possession a crime again so that we can incentivize programs such as drug courts, which are becoming obsolete. Because what those programs do is they help to address at least some of the underlying causes so that the individual can be internally sort of adjusted, because you know as well as I do, you served in the same areas that I was in or served in, and those people don't feel dignified. They don't like their circumstances. They just cannot remove themselves.
Well, and I think we weren't recording when we touched on this briefly previously, is that, you know, if this radical left ideology looks at allowing people to live in squalor as being compassionate, they've never really interacted with that community, because those people that are out and they're hungry and they're cold and they're in the throes of addiction
and they smell like feces and they're compromising their integrity for $1 for coffee.
I've seen plenty just shit their pants, piss their pants, like they're
dirt
just
all over, infections in their body,
staph
hair
all over,
matted up.
And it's like, you want to talk about compassion? You're literally perpetuating a state of torture for those people.
Well, and let me ask you this too, because this is something that I know about, especially you were a Seattle cop, all the encampments and all the girls and the women and the people that are being sexually assaulted at those encampments, and you guys are prohibited from policing them. You guys are prohibited from actually protecting anybody. Your hands have been tied.
They're like third world ghettos.
It's terrible.
And it's like, we have just accepted that that's how these people are living. And I mean, we're treating them like animals, right?
They're others. They're not even people. They're others.
And I've been guilty of that too, because,
me too.
Because, you know, at my business, I've had methamphetamine addicts break in and steal this and steal that, smashing my windows and like taking customers' purses out of their cars and shit like that. And when that happens, I want to fucking gut these guys like pigs, right? Like, I have a rage inside of me that fucking still burns strong when people fuck me over like that.
Yeah. I think it's less about what they do, or like, for example, less about being a meth addict and more about just being a disrespectful human.
Yeah. And there should be consequences for that.
For sure.
But the truth is, like, you know, it's a revolving door. And if we're not solution oriented and we're just saying, oh, we're going to let these people do this, you're basically just ensuring that they never get better.
We're saying that victims are perpetrators for wanting to have something done about it, and perpetrators are victims. And this is what I can tell you, and something you said jogged my memory, but when I get loaded, when I put a drug in my body, the first thing that happens for me is like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need more. So in the moment that I run out of money, I start pondering where I'm going to commit the next crime. It doesn't matter if it's an old person. It doesn't matter if it's a car. It doesn't matter if it's a house. If there's an opportunity, it's not about, and I will do whatever I have to do to not get caught.
Yeah. So
that
it's
includes hurting someone, and that drugs have that control. And so we have to recognize, you know,
that's dangerous as fuck to allow people in your society.
It's very dangerous
to just continuously function with that mentality.
It really is. And it's inhumane.
Yeah.
It is inhumane. It is inhumane to allow what we are allowing on our streets. We have the capabilities to do better. We can do better, and we need to do better.
And if you think about the amount of money and resources, like when I was a cop in Seattle, there would be teams of people tasked with encampment cleanup. And it's like, we would have to go there to make sure the scene is safe. And then they're there all day. Yeah. And like, that's a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
You have teams of people that are doing cleanup, teams of people that are like trying to police the parks up. And then you have all these cops out there that half of our fucking shift is dedicated to this kind of stuff. You want to start attaching a dollar amount to what is happening in Seattle? I don't know what it is, but it's millions.
Oh, it's a lot.
And so how about we take those millions of dollars? And here's the thing. We have watched the city degrade for a decade now. So I think it's safe to say, hey, you know what? Whatever whatever system that we have been operating off of is not working,
right,
and it's time to try something new.
But we want to continue to continue to move down the same path with the same solutions.
And maybe I need to put my tinfoil hat on here and go down the conspiratorial rabbit hole. But at what point does it almost feel intentional?
Well,
do you know what I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying. Well, we have to look at it like this, though, right? Everything in this nation is a business.
Yeah.
If we think the homeless industrial complex, the social service complex, the nonprofit industrial complex are not intentional businesses, we have ourselves fooled.
Yeah, for sure.
People are making money off of all this, just like incarceration, right? And so we went from one extreme end of the pendulum with over-incarceration, with lack of services, to this other end of the pendulum where we're doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so what we need is something in between. If we really do care about human life, we will equip the least of us that are existing on our streets, that we are supporting in their devastation, to actually be equipped so that they can care for themselves. And we have the capabilities of doing that. It would be far less financially stressful to do that.
For sure. You know, I look at speaking of Craig Hunami, Bellevue. How does Bellevue have their shit together? And on the other side,
they have more money than.
But
really, Seattle has a lot of money.
But on the other side of the floating bridge, it looks like a third world shithole.
Yeah.
Do you know how do they deal with the problem?
I don't know, but I do know that they have growing problems there too. It's just not. I don't think it's
not as prevalent,
right?
Yeah. Now, what is your opinions on plant medicines?
What do you mean?
Psilocybin, ayahuasca, ibogaine. There's been a lot of data that has shown that certain plant medicines can be extremely beneficial in breaking addiction. I watched a documentary called Dosed, and it followed a girl on her 20-year heroin addiction. And in 4 days using ibogaine, she no longer had the desire to use heroin. And this is what the documentary said.
How long did they follow her after that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. But this is one thing. This is what the documentary said. It said, if you look far enough back in any addict's life, there's a trauma attached to their addiction. Do you think that that's a fair statement?
I think with a lot. I wouldn't say all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what this says, and I know a lot of special operations guys, a lot of friends of mine have done these similar treatments, because what it does is it helps you process the trauma. And once the trauma is processed, you no longer fall back into the PTS triggers or the addictions and things like that. And I mean, obviously, if you're not familiar with it, you can't really speak to it.
Well, I've heard a lot about it. I have had people, this is my thing when it comes to any kind of mood-changing, mind-altering substance for myself. I don't know what anybody else does. It doesn't matter to me what other people do. What matters to me is what I do. And I won't try to solve a drug problem with
another drug. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's just me. I can tell you, I seriously doubt that I don't have a trauma. I have
10 million traumas
and 10,758,000 probably. And so, I'd probably have to fry a whole bunch on a whole bunch of mushrooms, try to figure it out. Not really willing to risk that. I mean, I just consider the hallucinogenics that I have done over time and how they actually make me feel in my body and what happens to me on the come down and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just, never willing to risk that because I have a relationship with all of the different chemicals.
You're of the mindset that there's the potential for it to just make you fall off the fucking rails.
Yeah, I like drugs. I like to change.
What did you say? Let the beast comes out or whatever?
Oh, yeah. And it's if you could just imagine a humongous demon that has you on marionette strings, that's me and my addiction. And I'm the marionette. And I'm just not willing to submit to that demon anymore. And so it's just not something that I'm not looking for a way out through a similar path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I'm just trying to face myself and be comfortable in my skin because there is huge benefit to that. And I value the things that I've experienced. I value the traumas that I've experienced. They've enabled me to really have a relationship with myself as well as other people.
That's a pretty fascinating perspective because
they allow me to serve others in a way that nothing else ever would.
And in reality, that's really the only outlook that you can have that keeps you in a positive mindset moving forward, right?
Yeah. And it makes me not want to shy away from the hard things that happen in my life. I recognize that even uncomfortable emotions or things that trigger me, like I learned so much in those experiences, and I gain. It's kind of like, if I were to have gotten clean and then just magically ended up in some financially unbelievably stable situation, I most likely wouldn't have learned how to manage my money, right? Because I would have went from never having anything to having a whole bunch of something, and I probably would have went crazy. But what I've gotten the opportunity to do is, learn little steps. Like I started out in low paying jobs. I had, I took the bus, as a 40-something-year-old woman, like I was raising my kid. I didn't really have crap. I was spiritually rich working in social services, but I've worked my way up into this place where I have things because I've learned how to manage them. And it's the same thing with my psyche. It's the same thing with my addiction. And it's the same thing with my trauma. As I've approached all of the things, and I use the mountains because I can control the effects and the results that I have with mountains. And so mountains, I guess, would be, my substance that I've used to deal with it. When I ponder, and I don't have any personal experience with it, but when I ponder, using a chemical of any kind to try to deal with a really long-term experience. So I'm looking for an immediate and instantaneous sort of abrupt ending to
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Instead of actually putting the time in and earning it.
Right. And becoming familiar with who I truly am and finding out what I'm actually capable of, and then being able to utilize that. And that's what I do on a daily basis. But I utilize my experience to serve other people. Like, to serve them, not just like going and throwing, burritos and blankets at people, but but literally, like, yes, you can overcome, and grabbing people's hands and walking them through things that are super hard and teaching them how to stand up for themselves and, for their own lives, not against other people, but to truly own who they are. And I honestly, I don't believe that I would be capable of doing it at the level that I do if I would have taken an easy route, a shortcut, another chemical path.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So when you're driving through wherever now and you see someone on a street corner holding a sign and you just know that's methamphetamine or that's heroin, like, are you compelled to try and help those people? Or like, do you, or is it?
Sometimes I'll give them some food.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll help them like that. But
are the majority of people that you were helping then, they have to kind of put themselves out there and come to one of your programs or be seeking help? And then that's when like, okay, this is something that could potentially have a positive ending because they're willing to put the work in. Yeah.
I mean, well, first of all, like for the most part, I don't necessarily like help individuals. I do, but I don't. So like,
I guess a better question is kind of unpack what you're doing then in these different aid organizations.
Yeah. Well, let me say, I'm not working with, I work for myself. I won't work for anybody anymore. So
hey, I'm right there with you. I always say,
not do it.
I wouldn't go back to patrol for $5 million a year.
Yeah. I don't want to work under somebody else's agenda. I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it, and I tend to have to leave my values at the door, and I just can't do that. So
exact same.
But when it comes to the individuals, like, the truth of the matter is there's the statement that goes around that somebody has to want it. That is true. In our current circumstances in, Washington State, we'll just talk about Washington. We have, our hands are tied to how much we can do because the cops aren't coming.
Yep.
You're not being arrested. And so, you have to hope for the best with folks. Now what I'm doing, I've created a program. I am pro arrest and incarceration. I've created a program to be implemented inside of jails and prisons. I've just presented that program to Pierce County Council and to the Department of Corrections this week. There's sincere interest in what I've done, what I've created. The program focuses on an individual. So I've created curriculum and a workbook. It's very deep and very intensive. I'm kind of a deep and intense person. So, and I know that it's not superficial at all, but it's meant to be facilitated by a person with lived experience. When I implement, I'm just putting it into the universe. When I do implement, I will be going in, I'll bring people in to train them, but I will be going in and facilitating this to, a number of people, however many people are in an area of the jail. And it will encourage people, if they sign on to doing this program, it will allow that person to uncover their own stuff.
Okay.
Right? It's not about me telling you what I see.
Yeah.
But it's like, there are questions set up in a way, like, first of all, what do you want to be? What are the contributing factors to your current circumstances? Who's responsible for, where you're at right now? What do you want your life to look like? Where do you think things went wrong? Different things like that. And there's a lot of questions, because what I know to be true is, again, if I tell you what I see, okay. Unless you have some reason to allow that into your awareness, you probably won't.
Yeah.
But if you say it to yourself, you're going to have a really different experience. And so a person has to uncover that. And then as they start to create, this awareness and to also inventory, like, what are your qualities and assets? Because we all have them.
For sure.
Whether or not, like, those are the things that push our behaviors to meet our needs, right? So we always have this underlying stuff that allows us to get our needs met. And most people, don't want to be in those kind of situations. Like, it's not often that you'll ask a person that's on the streets, and I feel like you've probably asked these questions. I know that I have, they don't like it, right? But they can't remove themselves from it because they're caught in the clutches of that demonic, beastly relationship that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But when a person is clear because they've been removed from the destructive path, right?
Yep.
And they're in long enough to get some clarity, then we implement not just this needs assessment and not just this curriculum, but then we start having people come in. We start having, education opportunities come in and present. We start having different services that come in and start interacting with folks, and then we create these relationships. And then my goal is, on the back end of this, is to have a structured housing program where we're literally walking people through the process of learning how to engage with their probation officers, to navigate their mental and physical health, to help them really become strong, to help reunify families, to help the individual, get the education necessary. But if you do not deal with the internals first,
none of that
the
other
externals
shit.
are going to be very temporary. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm also
pretty fascinated by this, because I think,
thank you.
Just sitting here listening to it, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
You are going to target your efforts towards the people that have walked that path, but now have the desire and the clarity to start putting the work in. And you're
probably going to use
have
that tool. It's a tool. Incarceration is a tool. We've been using it inappropriately. Now we're trying to not use it at all. What we need to do, we need to come from the way left end of the pendulum and the way right end of the pendulum and come into the middle, where we have separation, services, and accountability. When you teach a person how to be accountable, because they're the ones that have identified things, and you've implemented the necessary tools for them to learn how to navigate life that they didn't have or they forgot about, then they start to live with integrity.
Yeah.
They start to want to have accountability in their own life. Do I think it's going to have 100% efficacy?
No, of course not.
Nothing does. Nothing does, right? But we do have a significant portion of the population that's tired, and we will have a significant portion of the population that will have seeds planted. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. Right?
Yeah.
So those seeds will be planted. And again, on that back end, we're going to have a structured process where folks can be there long enough to, complete vocational stuff or, anything to help them get into living wage employment where they don't have to be dependent on different services. And so,
and it's like you just said, like in your 40s is where you started to incrementally learn about working and saving money and being responsible. Like, if you can kind of help them through that.
Exactly.
That's going to build value inside of themselves.
For sure. Well, and the thing is too, and this is what I've explained to folks, it's like, yeah, I can walk into a room full of those folks and teach this curriculum, but if you did, it'd be ineffective.
Of course.
Because it creates an amount of hope, because most folks don't have belief in themselves, right? And
when you walk in, the first thing you're going to do is put that picture on the board?
Maybe. Some of them already know me, though.
Build credibility.
Some of them already know me, but yeah.
But that literally goes, like, if someone walked in to learn jiu-jitsu from me and they found out that I was a white belt, oh, fuck you, I'm out of here, right? It's that same thing. Like, until you've walked the path, how can you really hold someone else's hand through it, you know?
Right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for lived experience connection, whether that be, you know, a law enforcement officer teaching somebody. If I come in and I try to teach somebody policing, they're going to laugh in my face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can talk to you about, you know, a person from my side of the street, you know, and inform you about, you know, what's beneficial and what's not. But like, I can't tell you how to be a cop.
Yeah.
I can't tell, you know, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You can't hire a hairdresser to build a bridge, but we're doing it all over the place, right? And when I was on UW campus, don't get me wrong, I had a great experience at UW, but the first year I was like, oh my gosh, these kids are so intelligent. They obviously know more than I do. But year 2, George Floyd happened, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is where I come from.
Yeah. You
guys don't know what you're talking about. And that's when I really started to own my stuff. But
I feel like that's a national problem is that a lot of people start to feel like they're subject matter experts in everything, and it's like
because they've read a whole bunch of stuff,
or they've scrolled Twitter enough and read enough comments, and it's like, fuck, man, people need to be comfortable saying, I don't fucking know. Yeah, you know, right. Well, and it's funny to me sometimes too when people really, my favorite thing to say to somebody that tells me what I'm saying is harmful is like, oh, really? What was it like for you when you stopped shooting dope and went to prison? What was that like? What was it like? Where'd you go when you got out? Oh, you've never been there? Oh, it's dangerous. Okay, well, that's cool. I'm not going to comment on your post. You're making them feel triggered right now. Well, right. You know? I have a 16-year-old daughter, so like I'm so comfortable with making people feel triggered. Like I get accused of that all the time. Well, fuck, we're coming up on 2 hours already. Oh my gosh, see, that's what happens. Dude, it goes quick. It goes quick when we have good energy. And and here's the thing too, is like podcasting is almost like going on a date, because it's like, am I going to vibe with this person? Right. Or is this going to be a weird, like, awkward experience? Weird, right. And I'm glad that we were able to just pretty much hit it off and have like good energy the whole time. Yeah. But I always end with this, for the people that are listening that want to reach out and ask you questions or know more about your program, are you comfortable with me linking your Instagram? Yeah, you can do Instagram, and I also have a website. Okay, text me links to that. Okay, and I'll put those in the show notes below so people can reach out to you directly. Okay, and learn more about your program that you're building and different things that you can offer and insights and whatnot. And then I mean, I know we've been going at it for 2 hours, but is there anything else on your mind that you think is important to share or shine a spotlight on before we wrap this up? You know, I mean, I'm really grateful that we were able to talk about mountaineering. It's a thing that I love. Maybe we'll fucking do a mountain climb someday. Dude, I was thinking about that, and that would be fantastic. I would totally be down. Let's do it. Maybe we can plan something for next season. Yep. For the next climbing season. So I'd love to take you up Vesper or something like that. Yeah, no, I totally. You know, it's not totally some crazy multi-day expedition, but it's totally fine. It's super dramatic and it's super beautiful. You know. Yeah, I identify as a chicken, but I'm down. I don't know. I'm just grateful. I really want people to really have an open mind when it comes to some of these, you know, policies that are being pushed, that really are destroying people's lives. You know, we've been sort of convinced to support these ideas of harm reduction, and these ideas have been in our communities for a long time, and our communities are declining. And you know, it's really just time for folks with lived experience that have overcome this stuff to step up to the table and talk about what worked for us, not about what they're telling you is supposed to work. It's time for us to own our experience and do that. And, you know, one of the greatest things that I have really experienced, and I'm not just saying this because, you know, you're that cool cop that I followed a couple of years ago, but
is that I'm finding a lot of value partnering with law enforcement on a lot of these things, because it's these kind of relationships that change the nature of the problems that have been occurring in our communities.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. And, moving forward, if you ever want help, like getting awareness out there or just sharing some of your stories or whatever it is, like a lot of people I do shows with, I maintain friendships with, and I hope it's the same. So
yeah, it will be.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.